Hello and welcome to the November property market update. I'm here, of course, with Robert, but as you can see, in a slightly different format to usual, just due to the logistics of where we're operating in 2024. It's people often working from home and remote offices and such like. But Rob, November's been quite crazy, and of course, there's been a lot of change since our last market update because we've had the budget in the middle. So there's been quite a lot of change. We're going to run through some of those changes with you, but also importantly, what most people want to hear is what's actually happening to the local Oxfordshire housing market rather than the national picture, because a Daily Mail headline is meaningless because an average price, as we all know, is perfectly pointless because what's going on in Cornwall is completely different to Yorkshire. So anyway, Rob, with that in mind, what's the most interesting thing that you think we should share to start with?
So the most interesting thing, the thing that is going to affect the most amount of people, is the stamp duty changes that are going to be coming from April the 1st. Now, we've already had one stamp duty change, which was an instantaneous change that happened just after the budget, which is for investment buyers, people who are looking to buy a second property in addition to their own property, which we saw the taxation increase from an additional 3% to an additional 5%, so a 2% increase in that.
Sorry to get you on that. Actually,
no, that is true.
The Telegraph, it is true, but the Telegraph, it's not an increase of 2%. It's an increase of 66%. Gone from 3 to 5%. That's an increase of 66%, not an increase of 2%. I wouldn't mind an increase of 2%. Anyway, sorry to get agitated by that, but there's a massive increase and a huge impact on anyone who buys additional properties to add to the pool of rental stock, which is obviously desperately lacking in properties. So, I appreciate I've got an agenda, but quite clearly, if I'm a tenant, I'm looking to rent a house and I'm competing with however many people, we need more people buying buy to let so that there's more properties in the market, and that will bring down rents. Anyway, I'll get off my high horse, but yeah, that is one of the big changes that's obviously impacted prices.
It's huge. And yeah. Like Alistair said, it is going to have a direct knock on to the rental market as well. There are going to be fewer investment buyers purchasing, and those investment buyers that do purchase are going to want to try and offset their what they've just paid in additional stamp duty by increasing rents. So yeah. It's a really, no matter how you think about it, it's an interesting move that the government chose to take. I'll choose to be more diplomatic than my colleague.
Anyway, let's move on to what's important.
So very importantly, it's the change that's coming on April the 1st to, as I say, the stamp duty. So the principal one is going to affect the first-time buyer market. So at the moment, first-time buyers get the first £425,000 of their purchase without any stamp duty costs. So you can buy up to 425, fully aware that you are not paying any stamp duty at all. That is coming to an end on April the 1st, and that will be a complete stopper on that. Now, what we're seeing is the average first-time buyer is purchasing a property for anywhere around 450 to 500,000 at the moment within Oxford and North Oxfordshire. That's the general sense. So if we're looking at those figures of a purchase price of 500,000 currently in today's market, those first-time buyers are going to be paying £3,750 in stamp duty. So you're basically paying a percentage between 425 and 500,000. From April the 1st, that is increasing, and that will go up to £10,000 because you only get a relief for the first 300,000 as opposed to a relief for the 425,000. So it is going to increase dramatically. That's a difference of £6,250. Which is a loss of money. If you're a first-time buyer and you've scrimped and saved, you now need to find an additional £6,250 if you aren't going to complete before the 1st of April, which is a huge increase.
But the increase is less impactful for second home movers, isn't it? That's
less impactful, but there is still an impact. Again, if we were looking at a purchase price of 500,000, the stamp duty thresholds again are changing. So you, at the moment, if you're a home mover, you don't pay any stamp duty on the first 250,000, and that's as of today. If you look at that in April the 1st, it's only the first 125,000 that you're not paying. So currently, again, home movers, I will say, are paying £12,500 on a £500,000 purchase price. From April, that will change to £15,000, a difference of 2,500. So it's impactful, but slightly less impactful than it is to certainly first-time buyers.
So really, it's the first-time buyers that are going to be sprinting to buy a property before the end of the year, because the legal process, as you know, Rob, Rightmove was saying the average transaction is 154 days, but that I think is a bit of a misnomer, because they're counting from when they go sold subject to contract online to when they disappear online.
Yes.
Now, that includes Mr. and Mrs. Blogs who have sold their property who need to find a house to buy before the chain kind of starts going, and also they're counting some less scrupulous agents that will leave houses reading sold so they can look bigger than they are. So the Law Society, their figure is between 12 and 16 weeks, which is, if we take 14 weeks, that's 98 days. So it's effectively 100 days, which is analogous to our average, which is 91 days, so 3 months to go through. So effectively, if you've got a first-time buyer, if they're going to be paying significantly less stamp duty, they need to be buying in November and December to get the legal works properly underway at the start of January, and then they're going to have a stressful conveyancing process because everyone's going to be screaming and shouting because they need to.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people pushing. You know, I've done almost a timeline of what we can of where things are, and a countdown almost. As of today of recording, which is the 19th of November, there are 133 days to April the 1st, which is 4 months, 13 days, or 19 weeks. Now, if we're looking at an average of 14 weeks, buyers really need to be buying within the next 5 weeks, which is buying before Christmas, or having a property secured before Christmas.
Because also there's only 2 weeks of legal forward progression in December, because the lawyers will hang up their boots from about the 18th of December and won't come back to the new year. And then when they do come back, they'll come back to a backlog. So it's going to be it's interesting.
So there is a lot to be said of pushing things forward. Now, what we have seen, and again, certainly at AR, is there have been an influx of first-time buyers, more so than I would say home movers that have been coming to the market. Not a lot of properties coming to the market, but those that are coming to the market are getting a good amount of interest and a decent amount of people coming forward to actually want to buy. The viewing levels are lower, which is to be expected in November, and as we approach December, that is to be expected. But the quality of those viewers is very, very good. High. So people are coming forward with offers. Exactly. And I think the knowledge that people are able to gain now with what is going to happen with stamp duty, I think is pushing that and driving that. But there is still a lot to do.
Yeah, you're right. And I think a secondary thing that's driving that, Rob, is the cost of rent. And if the reason we're getting so many first-time buyers taking action now, they're going to save 10 grand on stamp duty, as we know. But the second reason is if they're paying 1,750 to be in a crummy 3-bed semi, and they can buy their own place and pay 1,400. So the mortgage rate to rent rate, it's cheaper to own a house at the moment than it is to rent. That will start a debate. Jesus, the old HR debate about that. Talk to us about mortgage rates. Of course, they went down. So how's that impacted things?
Well, they went down. And the anticipation was that when we had the base rate cut from 5% to 4.75, that they would go down further. They haven't. The swap rates have actually increased since the budget. So again, for those of you who are new to this, the mortgage swap rate is actually what dictates what the mortgage lenders are going to lend on, and they have a sort of future prediction of where they believe the market is going to be in the future. And the swap rates have actually increased. They increased almost immediately after the budgets. Mortgage swap companies weren't terribly happy with the budget, but we've started to see them creep down a little bit, but they're still actually higher than they were pre the base rate cut. So it's going to take some time.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
No, don't worry.
So base rate adjustment is to try and stimulate the economy when things are rough, and then they put it up when things are rosy. I think the expectation is that the economy will be in a rosier place in spring, summer next year. There's going to be a lot of energy, and you've got to control inflation that way. So I think the reason swap rates are going up is because they're thinking, well, actually, they're not going to be needing to lower the base rate lower and lower and lower to stimulate activity, because actually there's a lot of roses and sunshine on the horizon. So that's my understanding of why it's not gone down. Are we ready to talk about Oxfordshire house prices versus national?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. We are indeed. So, house prices have dipped ever so slightly as we've come into November. This is principally asking prices, which again is fairly common in November and December. People who want to try and obtain a buyer in the quieter months will reduce their house prices. So they've dipped slightly from last month by nationally 1.4%, locally 0.8%. But the house prices are still 1.2% higher in November than they were in 2023. So there is still growth. I think, as we've said a lot of times, 2024 has not been a huge growth year, because ultimately it's been more of a recovery year from what we experienced in 2023. So 2023 was obviously a bit of a fallow year. We are in a recovery year. The anticipation is that 2025 is going to be a significant growth year, shall we say?
Absolutely. And for us too, we're recruiting for people. We're not, the phones aren't off the hook at the moment, but I need people to get trained and qualified, because we only have qualified people before things really kick off in March, April next year. So that's why we're recruiting now. So it's growth all round, and I'm quite excited about the next year, basically. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll be back with the December market update, and it will be very interesting. Obviously, we'll be looking at the year we've just had. It will be a bit more in detail than this one. And I'm really excited about doing that. I think there's going to be some great insights to be gleaned. So if you're not already following us on social channels, do, because then at least the update for December is going to come straight into your inbox. So, Rob, anything else you want to share?
No, I think with the December one, stay tuned for it, because you might get to see me in something rather garish, shall we say, for as we enter into Christmas. So those of you who come to our the Kidlington light turn on, certainly, if you've ever walked past our office during those events over the course of the last couple of years, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But
Indeed.
Stay tuned for that.
Good fun. Thanks for that, Rob.
All right, no worries.
Thanks for watching. See you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye now.